countries. You probably think of the US and China, but it hasn't always been this way. Throughout history, different nations have had their moments of great power, followed by periods of decline. One of the oldest of all, Egypt, certainly had its own share of ups and downs. A huge step forward happened in the 16th century. BC, with Pharaoh Amos I, he started what we now call the New Kingdom of Egypt. In the years that followed, Egypt's lands grew bigger. It took control of places like Palestine, Syria, and Phoenicia. Egypt was also able to fight off both raiding tribes and a new enemy from the northeast. The Hittites, the army was so good because it was very organized with a clear and strict system of ranks. Taming horses led to a powerful new weapon, the war chariot. A chariot with 2 soldiers gave Egypt a big edge in battle. They also started widely using long-range bows. The idea was to weaken the enemy from far away before the real hand-to-hand fighting began. For fighting up close, the main weapon was the Koppish sword. Its unique curved shape was great for both slashing and stabbing the enemy. Soldiers also started wearing popular armor made from bronze, and spear tips made of bronze were used all over Egypt. Ships were also used a lot to move soldiers from place to place. These wooden ships were amazing for their time and helped make Egypt famous as a strong power on the sea. Now let's jump forward to the middle of the 6th century. BC. A king named Cyrus II came to power. He took over the city of Ecbatana and called himself the ruler of Media. In the next few years, Babylon, Lydia, and Thrace also fell to his army. When people in the conquered lands tried to fight back, Cyrus quickly put a stop to it. What Cyrus started, the rulers after him kept going. The Persian Empire he built went on to conquer lands in Eastern Asia and even pushed into Greece. To do this, they had to cross a strait called the Dardanelles. In 480 BC, the army of Xerxes I famously defeated the Spartan king Leonidas I at the Battle of Thermopylae. At times, the Persian army grew to a huge size, as many as 700,000 soldiers. Then came Alexander the Great, who did what many thought was impossible. He defeated the massive Persian army at the Battle of Gaugamela. After this, the army of the Persian ruler, Darius III, was destroyed, and Persia had to give in to the Macedonian king. Over 10 years, Alexander's troops took over all the lands of the Persian Empire. He was even crowned pharaoh of Egypt and created the city of Alexandria. When his military campaigns were done in 323 BC, he made the city of Babylon the capital of his new empire. No matter how tough things got, the Macedonian army was never beaten. The secret to their success was their amazing battle tactics. They would change their strategy based on the situation and the kind of enemy they were facing, using different soldiers like infantry, the phalanx, or cavalry. The king was a genius at using his different forces together. The phalanx, their main group of soldiers with long spears, was meant to hold the line in a long fight. They were backed up by soldiers on horseback, who were then supported by foot soldiers with spears or bows. Moving troops around cleverly was also a key part of their plan. In the middle of a battle, the king could suddenly send one group of soldiers in a new direction. A team of assistants made sure these orders got to the commanders right away, so everyone knew what to do. In the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC, there were wars between what was left of Macedonia's empire and the growing power of Rome. They fought to see who would control the Balkans. These wars ended with the total end of the Macedonian Empire and the start of Rome's rise to greatness. What's amazing is that it's Rome that managed to beat the legendary Macedonian phalanx. They also defeated the army of Carthage, which was led by the famous general Hannibal. This success wasn't just because of new weapons and armor. It was also because of how they rebuilt their army with better discipline and new tactics. Rome paid close attention to things like getting supplies to their troops. Being a soldier became a very respected job. In fact, you couldn't join the famous Roman legions if you were poor, asterisk by the time of Julius Caesar. Every legion of 3,000 to 4,000 men had 55 ballistas, which were powerful new weapons for that time. Their tactics also got better with new formations. For example, legionnaires started using the testudo or tortoise formation, where they'd lock their shields together to protect themselves when attacking a walled city. The economy was growing fast too, in farming, crafts, and trade. In just 100 years, these positive changes turned a small Roman republic into a great and powerful empire. Even powerful Egypt became a part of Rome. By the 2nd century, Rome was at its most powerful, controlling all of Western Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Eventually, the Roman Empire split apart. Its eastern part became the Byzantine Empire, which inherited many rich lands. But this new empire had to deal with constant wars against invading tribes. Things got better when Emperor Justinian came to power. Thanks to him, the empire grew larger. By the middle of the 6th century, it controlled lands in Europe and Africa. The Byzantine navy also became very important. The invention of Greek fire, a weapon that could burn on water, was a huge threat to enemy ships. The Byzantine army could be beaten on land, but their fleet was almost impossible to defeat at sea. The influence of Byzantium also spread to religion. In the middle of the 9th century, the Christian church split into two parts, Orthodoxy in the east and Catholicism in the west. In the 10th century, problems grew with a new power in Europe, Kiev and Rus. The ruler of Rus, Igor of Kiev, led an attack on the Byzantine capital, Tsargrad. But it ended in a clear victory for Byzantium. Over time, though, the two countries began to trade with each other. A few decades later, the influence of Byzantium was so strong that the ruler of Rus, Volodymyr I, became a Christian. Rus adopted Christianity, the religion of Byzantium. It also borrowed legal ideas from Byzantium, creating its own set of laws. This close relationship helped Kiev and Rus to keep growing its borders until the mid-11th century. It took about 200 years for the next big power to rise. In the late 12th and early 13th centuries, a leader named Temujin, who we know better as Genghis Khan, united the scattered Mongol tribes. He created the Mongol Empire and became its first emperor. Over the next 20 years, he conquered huge parts of Asia and the Middle East. His army of horsemen used bows and arrows on a massive scale. They would shower the enemy with arrows until they started to run away. Then they would chase down the remaining soldiers and finish them off with axes, spears, and swords. Besides fighting directly, the Mongols were also clever. They used spies to spread fake rumors and create panic among their enemies. Genghis Khan also demanded strict discipline. Any soldier who ran away without an order or was late to a battle would be put to death. As a smart commander, Genghis Khan knew that supplies were important. He had people in charge of getting food and weapons to his troops. He also used horse messengers to deliver mail and orders quickly. Genghis Khan became the greatest conqueror the world had ever seen, and his personal wealth makes him one of the richest people in all of history. After he died, the rulers who came after him made the empire even bigger. In the second half of the 13th century, his grandson Kublai Khan conquered the lands of China, Korea, and Vietnam. He even used new ships called junks to try and invade Japan. But a powerful storm stopped his fleet. At its peak, the Mongol Empire covered an incredible 33 million square kilometers, and more than 100 million people lived within its borders. This makes the Mongol Empire the second largest empire in history. The Mongols ruled over different parts of Eurasia, controlling a huge area all the way until the middle of the 15th century. During this time, the Ottoman Empire was becoming very powerful. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, the Conqueror, invaded the Byzantine Empire and captured its capital, Constantinople. His powerful fleet played a big part in taking the city by controlling more land and the important sea routes of the Bosporus and Dardanelles. The Ottomans became very wealthy. They set up a strong government system to manage their resources for both the military and the people. The main fighting force of the Ottoman army was its cavalry, or soldiers on horseback. They also started using firearms. Along with guns, the Ottomans began to use a lot of artillery. The cannons they used were a major step forward, as they allowed them to successfully attack and break down strong fortresses. Each new ruler made the powerful state even bigger. Sultan Selim I added the lands of Egypt and Persia. The empire's greatest expansion happened under Suleiman the Magnificent. In the 1520s, the Ottomans conquered Hungary, which started a long conflict with the powerful Habsburg family that lasted for 300 years. In the first half of the 16th century, Charles V from the Habsburg family became the King of Spain and the Holy Roman Emperor. His 40-year rule marked the true beginning of Spain's colonial empire. Spanish explorers, known as conquistadors, like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, took over the lands of modern Mexico by defeating the Inca and Aztec empires. Even there, small groups of soldiers armed with horses and guns were able to defeat entire cities of enemies who had less advanced weapons. During the rule of Charles V, Spain became a major power on the world stage and the first huge empire to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Its navy grew to an incredible size and was the most powerful in the world during the 16th and 17th centuries. Besides, having better technology, the Spanish army used a new military strategy. They would get their enemies to join them as allies. A huge amount of gold and silver flowed from the New World to Spain, making the empire incredibly rich. As the fleet grew, so did the terrible slave trade. After Charles died, the country's desire for war and land only grew. When the King of Portugal died, Spain took over Portugal in what was called the Iberian Union. But having so much gold and silver coming from the colonies caused prices in the country to rise, a problem known as inflation. Still, Spain continued to expand its territories overseas for 2 more centuries. While European countries were busy dividing up the Americas, a new powerful country was rising in Asia. In China, the Qing Dynasty was formed, with Beijing as its capital. The Qing took over from the Ming Dynasty, which had ruled China after the Mongols were kicked out. The Qing Dynasty is known for its tough and aggressive wars in Asia. In the second half of the 17th century, a Qing general named Zheng Chenggong defeated the Dutch and took their colony of Taiwan. The Qing also won a war against Russia, took over Manchuria, put down a rebellion in the south, and absorbed the Dzungar Khanate. At its peak, the country's population reached 400 million people, an unbelievable number for that time. Farming grew on a massive scale. The country kept itself closed off from the world for the most part, but it did sell silk, tea, and porcelain to Europe. This trade would eventually lead to a very serious political conflict. The largest nation in all of human history was the British Empire. This powerful empire started with the Kingdom of England, which began its expansion in the late 16th century. For 200 years, its influence and the number of territories it controlled grew again and again. Even though the United States declared war and won its independence in the 1770s, that didn't stop the British Empire from taking over new lands. It steadily took control of territories like Canada, Australia, India, and other countries in the first half of the 19th century. A trade dispute between Britain and Qing China led to the Opium Wars. The British Empire, with an army of only 20,000, completely defeated the Qing Dynasty, which had an army 10 times larger. The result of that victory was that Britain got control of Hong Kong and expanded its power in China. The British found a revolutionary way to control the population by selling huge amounts of opium from British-controlled India, over 100 million. Chinese people became addicted, which seriously weakened the Qing's future. The British Empire also made a major mark by being the first to ban slavery. At the height of its power, this empire controlled almost a quarter of the world's land. With a population of more than 400 million people, at the same time as Britain, and Spain, France also tried to build a colonial empire, but it kept losing out to the British. The country seemed like it would always be in second place, but it did have its own moment of great power. The French Revolution brought a man named Napoleon Bonaparte to power. The young commander was given a weak and disorganized army. In a very short time, he used his strong will to clean it up. He had officials who were stealing from the army shot. He also forbid generals from physically beating soldiers, which was a normal thing in other armies at the time. He made sure his army had proper clothing and weapons. He started allowing people who weren't French to join the army. Getting artillery from place to place was also completely changed. Private companies that used to make a lot of money moving guns for the government were cut out. The emperor's changes not only improved the army's equipment, but also had a huge positive effect on the soldiers' spirits. Because of all this, in the early 19th century, the army of Napoleon's France became an enemy to be feared. At its peak, the army had more than 500,000 soldiers, even though France conquered less land than the other empires we've mentioned. In a one-on-one fight, the French army became unbeatable. Only groups of countries working together could stand up to this new threat in Europe. You can't just measure what Bonaparte did by the number of battles he won. During the Napoleonic period, France had a huge amount of influence in Europe. This influence was so great that the Emperor of France even got involved in the family arguments of the Habsburgs, Europe's most famous rulers. It's no surprise that even 200 years later, Napoleon is still seen as the most important figure in 19th century Europe. The next big war in Europe was the Franco-Prussian War. Napoleon's nephew, Napoleon III, was defeated. France lost the regions of Alsace and Lorraine. The scattered German states, led by the Kingdom of Prussia, then came together to form a powerful new player on the world stage, the German Empire, led by William I. During this war, the German army used a new piece of technology, an anti-aircraft gun made by a company called Krupp. It could fire an incredible 3.5 kilometers, which was unheard of at the time. The victory over France led to a 43-year period of peace in Europe, the longest it had seen in a while. But it would be the German Empire that would start the most bloody and destructive war up to that point, World War. As a result of a worldwide economic crisis, 6 million people in Germany were out of work. This set the stage for the 1930s, when a new state emerged in Germany, the Third Reich, led by Adolf Hitler. Feeling angry about the humiliating defeat in the First World War, the new dictator wanted revenge on Europe. He combined a planned economy with a free market, which got rid of unemployment and helped the economy recover. In just a few years, the country built up its military machine to a size never seen before. The Reich joined with Austria and took over the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. Then in September 1939, the country completely invaded and occupied Poland. The Third Reich was at its military peak. It perfected a new kind of warfare called the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Groups of tanks were used on a massive scale. Commanders with years of experience used these tanks in wedge formations to advance very quickly. The German Air Force was also a powerful force, providing support for the ground troops. The Navy, blocked sea routes in its U-boats, were very successful at sinking enemy ships, including American ones carrying supplies to the Allies. The infantry also learned a new way to fight. They became very good at attacking strong defensive bunkers called pillboxes. They used assault guns to shoot into the small openings of the bunkers and then used flamethrowers to clear them out. This allowed the German army to attack effectively and capture city after city. The German military's spy service, called the Abwehr, and its special operations groups became more and more professional. Over the next 2 years, the Third Reich took over many European countries. On June 22,